Hello, everyone. I'm going to wait a bit for this guy to sit. So, hello, everyone. I am JP, and I'm going to talk about the evas filters, which is kind of a new obscure feature. So first, who am I? Because there's a few people I don't know here who may not know me. I am French, so I'm a broker, as everyone knows. I used to work for VLC. This is why I'm using my videoland.org email, but I don't work for VLC anymore. Don't ask me anything. I've been in Korea working for Samsung for like too long already. Pretty much. And I managed to join Cedric's and Raster's team and more or less Roy's team in last year after fighting for 1 year that I wanted to change teams because I was working on Android before and it was just proprietary software at Samsung. What I've been doing was mostly evas work, so mostly internal code. So what are the evas filters? I will explain what they do, why we decided to go for this kind of concept, what is the design concept for the filters, for the effects, what it had now, like the status, and of course a demo, and what I plan to do in the future. So the idea is to have fancy font effects and also potentially like the same effects on images, which are like, for instance, like shadows or like 3D effect kind of thing, or like, why not fire effect on text. So if you want to see all your applications in Fire or something, you will need the filters. One reason is because the mobile devices, like Tizen devices or all, have very high DPI, so we have room to do very fancy effects, as opposed to just what we actually have now, which is just like 1 pixel shadow or 1 or 2 pixels shadow kind of thing. With high DPI, we can do like 50 pixel shadow or something like that. And the idea is to be more powerful than HTML, CSS effects. So do at least as much as HTML, CSS can do, but more. And also the idea is that in Tizen there could have been an in-house proprietary effect library that was limited to just a few features. So we want to be better than that. And Photoshop, because the idea is I will explain the concept behind. So CSS has a font shadow property, which allows people to do some kind of fancy stuff. It's just basically just blur behind your actual text. So these effects, I can very easily do the same in using the evas filters. And as you can see, they kind of need either like very big text or high DPI, so that you can just see the blur. Yeah. But it's only blur. There's nothing much more. There's no texturing. There's no like displacement or anything. It's just one property. Another example is like on Galaxy S series. The title, the clock, has a very subtle effect, which is just like some shadow here, some contour around the font, which makes the font look a bit different. It's not just flat. And UI designers really like this kind of fancy effect. So
I thought UI designers love flat. Flat's all the rage, man.
I don't know, man.
It was the wrong generation, man.
So that's another example. And yeah, as I said, like other libraries in-house are proprietary, and they only have a few APIs usually, which are just specific, like let's do a shadow of 5 pixels, and that's it. But they can't really do some really fancy things. They can't do something that animates. They can't change that many things. And they are usually, like in Samsung mode, they are just like driven by very precise development UI requirements. So the development, the concept, everything is just limited to one product, and then everything's thrown away, and it's not very powerful then. Also, it means there's no room for creativity for the designers. So Raster, being the crazy guy that he is, he thought that we should actually implement Photoshop in real time instead of just having like a few blur here and there. No, let's do Photoshop. So why Photoshop? I'm saying because the concept is we are going to have multiple buffers, which are like layers, and we can do some basic operations on these layers. It's basically just simple image processing, and then combine these buffers together to have an output. And this is scripted, so I'm using Lua language. At the beginning, I was using some kind of custom language, but Lua is more powerful and it's very light, and it's already there, so I switched to Lua language. I will explain the buffers, the concept. The reason I explain this is because if you want to use the filters, you need to understand the concept of the buffers. Without understanding that, you can only basically just like copy and paste some code here, and that will be it. But if you understand how the buffers are combined together with different operations, then you can do your own effects. So we will have by default an input buffer, and with it already contains some text, the text that your text object contains. And then what you can do is like apply some operation. For instance, grow will kind of make it fat, make it look fat. So this one will be in like a new buffer that will be just containing this fat thing. And then we can use this to make a more blurry effect that will create like some kind of glow behind the letter. We can add more other like blur on top. So this one is actually just the first buffer that we just add some blurry and cyan color. And we combine more and more. And then on the output buffer, we just like draw, for instance, in yellow here. That's not really beautiful, but these pictures I made with GIMP. And then I was like, well, that's stupid. Why do I use GIMP? And then I did the same with my filters. And like the output is pretty similar. I didn't tweak the pixel numbers to be perfect, but basically it's very similar. So there's just a few basic operations. Blend is just, OK, you take blend and you apply a color. Then there's blur, which you can choose the radius. You can just do in one direction if you want. There's curves, color curves. So if you know GIMP, for instance, you can choose to modify the colors according to their value. Like you apply a function to each color, basically. So each color channel can have something. So you could have this kind of effect or this kind of output just from one blur image and applying the colors, the curves. So grow, I already explained. Mask is just taking an image or actually any of evas object as pixel input, like an image proxy, and applying it, multiplying it to the font. So you can just have like textures in the font itself. Then you can have, sorry, bump maps, which are like kind of 3D effect. Like the bump map itself represents like a relief, like 3D, like an altitude kind of thing. And then you apply a light on it, and that gives like shadow and lightning effect kind of thing. And you can also displace, and then custom space is even worse.
Is that possible?
So basically, displace is like each pixel in this map will represent an offset. So you will pick different values, and you will just kind of move the pixels around to create this just in one operation from the normal font that we had. As I explained, the mask function and some other functions like the bump map and displacement map use external pixel data. And that pixel data can come from another evas object. So usually just we take an image that will just give some texture or some like bump map or whatever. And it works the same way as a proxy. So you set a source, and you get the pixels, and then you can just do whatever work you want to do. Now for the API, it's very simple. You will find these two functions here. They are actually marked as experimental since they're out. I kept them EO because they're not entirely stable, but I shouldn't change anything like make them unstable from now on. Right now, in Edge, you can add effects to text objects. I should add for image objects because image filtering is already supported, actually. Text block support is not there, unfortunately. It's extremely hard to do. And yeah, well, I didn't have the time to work on that. Okay, yeah, so presentation is boring, so let's do actual demo instead. And I needed a cat after that. Always get a cat, right? So, so this is like one of the effects that I showed you from CSS. So you have the CSS code here, which is like just a comment. And then you have the equivalent code here. So I don't know if I need to resize or something. OK. So you can see this is really basic Lua code. Just a series of functions that you apply to the input buffer. And then I will just show you a few others, which are either kind of ugly, like this one. Ah, shit. Or like, no. Like using curve, the curve function, you can do actually like contour effect. You can have like kind of old style 3D effects like this emboss kind of thing. So you see some shadow on the top left and some light on bottom right. You can have maybe this one. So here you apply another, this is the source image, and you can apply some kind of gradient in the text with some shadows and some kind of contour as well. And then one thing that is funny is that it depends on an evas object. So if you have something that animates, it will just animate on its own. So you can see like the text, it's just a normal text object. Like if you want to see here, I can say EDevDay. And it's just like fully real-time rendering. I'm not saying the performance is great, but at least you can see like it kind of works like that. So maybe this one is just showing if the font is always the same. So you can see like you can have some kind of, I don't know, splash effect or something on the text and also on the cat. This one is similar. We can do like kind of mirror effect like this. Maybe this one. No, this one's. Another CSS effect that I showed before, like this one. So it looks pretty similar to the CSS effect we saw. We can do like kind of inner glow instead of an outer glow. And finally, we can even do some kind of transparency. So here we have like glows and also like some kind of translucency and like this gradient kind of thing as an image. But if we just remove the background color, we will see that the text is actually kind of transparent because it changes color. And I think that would be it for now. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Weirdo? It's just kind of weird. All right. All right, so current status, as I'm saying, it's not really optimized. It's only in software rendering. So even in OpenGL, it will work, but it will use software rendering into buffers that we create. And if we, in case we have one of these proxy images, then we need to use GL read pixels, which is extremely bad for performance. So there will be a lot of work that I will have to do about that. I have some errors and like some functions don't really work with all buffers. So first thing I would like to do is working on the OpenGL acceleration, which means implementing blur and all the basic functions in OpenGL with shaders. Then I would like to have, using the fact that we are using Lua, to have support for scalability. Actually, Mike told me about that like yesterday. That's like a plan, something I want to do for a long time. Because right now, you have pixel values, but you cannot scale your UI, your effect. Yeah, I need to add support for edge images as well. And finally, maybe like some more improvements about having a GUI editor as instead of just the weird script language. And of course, talk about it. And that's it. Any questions? All right. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Is it that complex to have explore support that kind of stuff? It's great. I mean, I'd like to have that in 10 minutes.
So one big problem is that actually, when you have a blur, for instance, it will spread out. And in text grid, like you only have that much space. So if you kind of spread it out, it will look clipped, or it will have side effects. So either you choose to clip it, in which case maybe it's not really good.
By rendering everything that has that you use clips and do first rendering of the clips that effects set on, and then you do the normal thing on top. Should that be okay?
That's what we do in TextFlow, but it's a bit.
Yeah, but and for text grid is monospaced, so
yeah.
It should be better.
Yeah, but it's still the same problem. So here's another example. You have some text that glows and has a shadow. What you want is we want the shadow below the text and all other text that's next to it. You'd like the glow to be on top of text that's beside it, because the glow is on top. And that means you have to understand which layers or which buffers in which effects will be put underneath things neighboring it that may be using different effects. They may be going through like an emboss filter or something else. So it's in the beginning it sounds simple, but once you start looking at the certain cases like that, it becomes really nasty. And it's actually the same problem whether it's text grid or text block. Because the problem is you want different filters applying to different parts of the text.
Yep.
And that's really the core of the problem.
And yeah, also performance would be really hard to handle that. Other questions?
It would allow terminology to look really interesting. That's for sure.
Yep.
Absolutely. But there's lots of performance considerations here. That's really nasty. And correctness.
Okay. Yep. Next one.